if you're going to make some of these moves that we're talking about, whether it's a Lindholm or a Hanifin, to have team control for as long as you can to really allow you to do that load up. That's pretty important. And so I think it's more about the wall than it is the contract, but it's a legit conversation I think they have to have, sometime now. And maybe they had it over the break, but it's going to get real now, I think, depending on what his diagnosis is and when he comes back into the lineup.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 201, presented by CLNS Media and sponsored by our good friends over at FanDuel and Factor Meals. My name is Conor Ryan, and once again, we are joined by 98.5 The Sports Hub's Ty Anderson. Ty, what's going on?
What's up, man? How are we doing today?
I'm doing well, Ty. I'm doing well. I don't think Bruins fans are, at least the ones who attended Tuesday's game against the Calgary Flames. I think we talked about this, I think in the middle of that game going on. If that was like your first time at a NHL game, first time at a hockey game, first time at a Bruins game, I feel very bad for you because that game was not fun. Beyond the fact that it was a 4-1 loss for Boston, entertainment factor, not good. Crowd wasn't into it. Players maybe were still sweating out some of their margaritas from the All-Star break. Wasn't a good product, I think, on the ice on Tuesday.
Yeah, definitely. You get those games every so often in an 82-game season, but that was rough, man. That's like last year. Last year was a record-setting year, right? And I knew somebody whose only game was the Nashville game where they lost like 2-1 and they scored their only goal of the night with like 5 seconds left in the third period. And it's like, I was talking to them like, I'm so sorry you picked the worst game to go to in the season that was basically perfect, regular season anyways. That was the worst game. So last night, probably their worst effort of the season. I feel like that's probably a fair assessment. Just didn't have any jump whatsoever. And things that you thought could be a launching off point just weren't. And so you have those kind of nights. I'm not going to get too high or too low about it, but no, entertainment value was absolute garbage last night's game. Tends to happen sometimes in this league, and it just sucks when it happens after about 10 days off.
Right. No, it kind of reminds me of, as you said, that Nashville game, or even I think it was that game, the Kraken home game, where I feel like energy was completely down. I don't remember what the score was. I think Bruins got 1 goal out of it. Yeah, it was not a fun product out there on the ice. Again, that was a record-setting team, stacked. Those things happen over the span of 82 games. So I agree with what you kind of said, and it seems like that's more or less what was echoed by players like Charlie McAvoy after the game. That shit happens. They're not really going to dwell too much on it. And again, I think you look at that game, a lot went wrong for the team, right? Like you can point at a lot of people are focusing in on the physicality, the lack of pushback, especially when Martian got trucked over. That I think is something that I'm sure they'll focus on moving forward. I feel like that happens every year. There's that one game where the response in like a bang bang play isn't really there, and the players immediately afterwards are like, yeah, we probably should have corrected that. So I imagine that, I don't know if that means we're going to have a brawl on Thursday against Vancouver, but as something that I think sometimes just needs to be reinforced. But I think when you look at, the physicality, the PK, once again, having a pretty rough night, which has kind of been a trend since the holidays for this team. Jeremy Swayman had a couple of goals that I think he would like to have back. Not a lot really went well for this team in this game. Are you viewing it more as just a one-off, or is there anything from this game that you think this Bruins team can take from Tuesday that's like, all right, we have to build off of this, make sure it doesn't snowball, as opposed to it just being like, fuck it, burn the tape, let's get past this one?
Yeah, I think you can always learn something from, wins and losses. I think the biggest thing for me is like this team has had problems starting well. Like it really feels like they wake up late in first periods. They don't really set the tone out of the gate, or at least it feels rare that they do. And that's that's not them. You go back to who they've been. This last decade, really, it's on time start, right? You heard it from Cassidy, you hear it from Montgomery. It's what they want. But you're also bang on about the PK. I believe it's now bottom 10 since the Christmas break. That's got to get cleaned up. Like if you are going to be as good as you want to be, that can't be the case. And you look at the teams, ahead of them, so to speak, ahead of them, who's been worse PK wise out of the break. It's been Toronto. It's been the Islanders who made a coaching change. It's been the Sharks, the Ducks, the Caps, and the Blue Jackets. That is not a crew that you want to hang with in 2023-24. So, I also think that, and this is a greater picture thing, I know, but you look at their penalty trouble and their PK trouble, they just take too many penalties. And they take penalties at the worst time. And I will look at last night's game where, they should have got a 5-minute major. I don't think Marchand deserved the slashing the goalie. Like, I didn't hear the whistle. I didn't hear the whistle, and I don't think anyone did, when they called him for that. So whatever. But you look at later in the game, they're trying to make a push, they're trying to tie it, and they take a too many men penalty. Like that can't happen. And that's what I'm talking about with penalties. Forget the stick infractions, but just bad penalties at the worst time. And that's an example of it. So it just generating momentum and then sustaining it has been difficult for this team despite their record. So that's the biggest concern for me, is that this team, when they're not going, they have a hard time getting out of their own way. And maybe that's the case for a lot of teams. Hockey's a game based off mistakes, but it feels especially glaring that when they don't have their game, generating momentum and generating positive, sort of momentum in any respect is difficult for this team.
Yeah, and it kind of harkens back to, we talked about this the last couple of weeks, really, but looking at the trade deadline and what this team needs. And I think you can make a very compelling argument. They need both a tone setting, maybe bottom six forward, and a defenseman. We've kind of gone back and forth. I think last week we both talked about how, we made our case as to why they should maybe prioritize a defenseman more than a fourth line star or what have you. But I think when you look at the way the PK is going, the way that some guys further down the lineup are playing, I don't think it's been the best year for Grizzly, obviously, but even like Forbert, who was really, really strong at the start of this year. We all know how good he is on the PK, but even at 5-on-5, he was really strong out of the gate. Number of injuries he's dealing with, it was really rusty coming off that LTIR stint. He's dealing with something else now on top of that. It does feel like this is a team that if they had to make just one move, which might be the situation they're dealing with in terms of just the assets, the cap space they have, feels like they might be better suited looking more at defense than maybe a physical forward up front, because it does feel like that is an area, whether it is the Forberts or the Grizzlies, Shattenkirks, what have you, where they just need a little bit more reinforcement at that part of the lineup. Because it kind of reminds me of like, the St. Louis Blues in 2019. A lot of big bodies, a lot of really strong players. The one guy that was not that good in that series, Vince Dunn. It was like the one little weak link in there. And he became a very good player, but I think he was, 21, 22, probably wasn't ready for the playoffs. Bruins picked him apart whenever he was out there, but that was like the one little weak link. I feel like you have a few areas further down the lineup with this D-core that probably need to bolster a little bit between now and March 8th.
Yeah, with Derek Forbert, it's interesting because he hasn't looked right since coming back. And the natural belief was that, he re-aggravated whatever's been bothering him all year. But Jim Montgomery says, no, this is a new injury. Okay, well, So now you have one injury that's been bugging you all year. Yeah, now you have a new one. You don't look great, first of all. And then secondly, he had a play last night where he throws it right up the middle, intercepted.
Yeah.
Bruins were lucky that Calgary, I think they missed the net. It was in the second period of play. But between that and Shattenkirk's game is kind of hot and cold. Like it's kind of leveled off a little bit. And so, like that's something that you got to watch, you got to look for. And like, yeah, I think I might be more swayed on your side now, where I'm saying, okay, now you need a defenseman. But this is the nightly battle you're going to have between now and March 8th. And that's why I say that sometimes losses are good if you can learn from them. I think the Bruins may learn what they need more from losses than from wins. Wins, everyone's feeling great. Everyone is feeling good. Like you may have that, we got out of danger there, but you feel good overall. Losses is when you're forced to take a deeper, hard look and say, okay, do you have enough here in a 7-game series? So, I think the biggest thing is that you just want certainty in some respect on your defense beyond Charlie McAvoy and I would say Brandon Carlo. Like those are your two bedrocks this year. Lindholm has been better of late, but I would have to go back and rewatch that sequence. But I think that Lindholm and Pastrnak were a reason why they got that too many men. If I want to go back and watch it, but I think it was them two there that kind of had some miscommunication. So, I think that's, you watch the team and like, you just want some certainty on that back end. Right now, they don't have any of it, it feels like.
Yeah, it's one of those things where even like Lindholm, as you said, been stronger, I think, over the last maybe month or so. Also had that pinch that led to that Carolina loss, which Jim Montgomery was pissed about. So, like, again, even if it is just a short thing of like a Middleton or another maybe stronger guy on defense, like we mentioned Parker Weatherspoon, I don't think he's going to be your savior down there. And also, I think you look ahead at this game on Thursday, great opportunity to get him in the lineup, Weatherspoon. You got to see how he does against actual teams that can be really aggressive, high-powered offense, team that will be in the playoffs. I don't think Calgary is going to be in that situation. So need to give him an extended look here. But even if Weatherspoon is a pleasant surprise, I wouldn't call him a revelation, but a pleasant surprise as being maybe a guy that can play 16, 17 minutes, I think you still need someone else back there, whether it's a Middleton or, Nick Sealer, who's blocking every single shot, it feels like, for Philly. Someone like that might be an option for the Bruins. So we'll talk a little bit more about other potential options for the Bruins on the blue line. But before we do that, let's take a quick break and hear from our good friends over at FanDuel.
Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Once again, shout out to our good friends over at FanDuel. All right, Ty, we've talked a lot about potential trade targets for the Bruins. We're looking at fourth line guys, the Pat Maroons, Brendan Duhaimes, guys like that. We talked about third pairing guys like Ilya Lyubushkin. Middleton is a second pair, third pairing guy. One guy who's been brought up a couple of times, probably the top target on the market now, Noah Hanifin, Calgary Flames defenseman, having a very, very good year. I think he's got almost 25 points, averaging, I think, over 23 minutes of ice time per game. Had a goal on Tuesday against the Bruins. Again, not a great goal for Jeremy Swayman to give up there, but regardless, is viewed as probably the top target both at the trade deadline and in free agency if he gets there. So I don't know how realistic it is the Bruins are going to be targeting him between now and March 8th, just in terms of what the cost is going to be, the fact that they've been linked to him before. But if he does hit free agency, again, that's a big if, right? Yeah, you run that risk of him getting traded somewhere else and putting pen to paper pretty early on. But if he's there in July, the Bruins have, 26, 27 million in cap space. Is he kind of your top target you look at if you're looking outside of this organization to add to it?
Yeah, I think so. And a big reason why I feel that way is that perhaps the Bruins are not as big on Elias Lindholm as maybe we were to think. Maybe they like him, but not enough to give him $9 million a year, if that's the asking price. And maybe the Bruins are weighing it internally and saying, would we rather give 7.5 or 8 to Noah Hanifin, a high-end left shot D, or do we want to give that to a center who's older and who maybe we're not as high on? We all know that they liked Noah Hanifin back in 2015. Not sure if they liked him as much as people thought. I think they liked any of those defensemen. I think they liked Werenski. I think they liked Hanifin. Provorov, I don't know about, but I know that they liked Werenski as well. So, they liked all those guys. And so if Sweeney likes a guy, he tends to get them. At some point or another, he tends to bring them in. And so, I think that you look at it that way, and that would just make sense, a natural fit. The question I would have, how much money is too much money for your top four? And I think that's the only question you would have, because the fit is there between Forbort and Grzelcyk. You have 2 expiring contracts there. You have a need for a long-term upgrade there, I think, positionally. Mason Lohrei, I think the best way to ease him in is third pairing, second pairing next year. So you bring another high-impact guy that allows you to do that. And so, but how much is too much? You have McAvoy at 9.5. You have Lindholm at 6.5. Carlo's 4.25. I think good deal. Really good deal. But if Hanifin's making 7.5 or 8, what are you at? Almost 28, 29 million for your top 4? It's a lot of money. I like it, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I think it all comes down to, what you view as being, I think, maybe the foundation or the bedrock of whatever this next team is going to be, right? And I think if, again, on paper, that's fantastic for a top 4. You got 4 guys you can rely on, mix and match whoever you want to play them. They all can move the puck. They're all big bodies. McAvoy's only 6 foot, but hits like a guy who's 6'7". Hanifin's a big guy. Carlo, Lindholm. And then again, as you said, Lohrei, if you give him time to marinate and play on the third pair, maybe you have a more of a sheltered role at the start, but give him steady reps. Pretty good third pairing guy to have. And then, hell, mix and match whoever you want to round out that third pairing, whether it's a veteran pickup, a guy like Weatherspoon, whoever it may be. You can roll with kind of whatever there when you've got that much talent in the top 4. And if you have that in place with a guy like Swayman as maybe their number 1 next year, you're already in a pretty good spot, not counting the fact you've got guys like Pastrnak and, Coyle, Zacha, what have you up front. You're in a pretty good spot. It's all just, as you said, depends on how you want to allocate that cap space you have, right? And again, the Bruins might view it as like a worthwhile investment. You sign this guy long-term, the cap should continue to jump up. That if you got all these guys already signed long-term, you don't have to deal with another big free agency exodus until 2027, 28, when you should have even more cap room available. Maybe you view that as a worthwhile thing. It just depends on how they view other areas of need. Because as you said, like, if you asked me at the start of the year, I'd be like, nah, have you seen how good Lindholm is? Like, fuck it. They don't need a guy like Hanifin. They need a Lindholm or a guy like that. May not be the case now. And again, that's not to say that I don't think the Bruins are going to just be like, we're locked in on Coyle and Zacha, and we think Poitras is going to be a top 6 guy when he's 23, 24. Like, I think they're still going to do their due diligence. If another guy becomes available in the next year or so that maybe has a higher upside of being like a proven top line center, maybe they kick the tires there. Maybe that's when they decide to relinquish another first round pick, or maybe their draft pool gets better and they decide to target a guy like, I don't know, like a Keller or Hurdle if he's available or what have you. They view someone like that as being a worthwhile investment. Lindholm remains to be seen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he lights it up now that he's with Vancouver with kind of the supporting cast around him, but I could see them maybe having a pass on a guy like him who's worth, as you said, maybe $9 million. Upgrade your defense with a guy that really gives you probably the best top 4 in the entire NHL. And you deal with that center position as it kind of comes along. When the real big fish is out there, then you kind of put bring the harpoons out. But for right now, I just don't see Lindholm as being the guy that moves the needle enough for them to shell out $9 million a year for him.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is that they're big fish hunting, but they got to make sure they get the big fish, right? And so that's always hard though, because those guys rarely hit the open market, as we know. But I think with Hanifin, like, you would have not only the best top 4, but probably the most versatile in terms of what you're able to do with it. In terms of, you could go back to Lindholm and McAvoy if you really want, which has been a super pairing for this team over time, and have Hanifin with Carlo, because Hanifin is mobile enough to hang with Carlo. And then you have a pairing. You'd have a top pairing where you got a 6'4" Lindholm and a 6'1" McAvoy. Then you got a 6'3" Hanifin, a 6'5" Carlo. Like, that also lines up with what we've talked about before, which is this league-wide trend of having bigger defenses,
big boys,
and smaller, speedier forward groupings that allow you to basically just to cover as much ice as possible and also pester the opposition. So I feel like that's where they're naturally trending, is to get more size, but also more mobility back there. And I think that's the constant tug of war that you're having, right? It's like, you want to have big bodies back there, but they got to be able to skate. They got to be able to move and make plays, especially in this system. And I think especially when complementing your right side guys, whether it's McAvoy, whether it's Carlo, like, those guys need somebody who can retrieve a puck. Like, we've seen it now, whether it's been Lozon or Chara or Forbert. Like, they need somebody who can retrieve and make puck plays with them. And if you don't have that, it's going to limit that pairing overall. So Hanifin checks a ton of boxes in that regard. And maybe this is the, that's the consolation, so to speak, is, okay, you can't get that high end center. Well, if you juice the hell out of the defense, that's almost as good as having a high end center because of the impact it makes at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, it almost kind of reminds me of, as you said, like them getting the big fish on the market. You even look at, teams in the past couple of years who have a shit ton of cap space and sign a lot of like pretty solid players, but are they game changing guys? Like, I look at like Detroit the last couple of years getting, guys like David Perron, Andrew Kopp, good players. Are they moving the needle enough? Like, as in terms of what they're investing all their money in? Would you rather sign a guy who can be a 20 goal scorer, or would you sign a top 4, 25 minute a night defenseman that anchors already maybe the best defense in the league, right? In terms of just the personnel and the ceiling of them. I'll take the, the unquestioned top guy on the market and a guy like Hanifin. So we'll see kind of what the Bruins do there, where Hanifin maybe ends up, because it does feel like he ain't going to be in Calgary that much longer if he doesn't want to sign there long term. Probably he's sick and tired of the really shitty locker rooms and bad facilities in Calgary. So he might be on the move. So there'll be definitely something to monitor in the next couple of weeks. But before we round out this podcast, Ty, let's take another quick break. Hear from our friends over at Factor Meals. Get started on your New Year's resolutions with Factor, so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from each week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. No more wasting time in the kitchen. Not only does Factor offer fast, simple solutions when I'm too busy to cook, they also help me stay on top of my goals. With offerings like Protein Plus and Keto, I can stay on track. This is definitely going to come in handy for my New Year's goals. So head to factormeals.com/poke50 and use code POKE50 to get 50% off. That's code POKE50. Factor Meals, your go-to ready-to-eat meal delivery service. And now, let's get back to the show. Once again, shout out to our good friends over at Factor Meals. All right, Ty, let's end this podcast by looking at a guy who has not really been able to find his footing as of late, and that's Matt Poitras. We all know how impressive he was out of the gate this year, had 13 points in 27 games, goes to World Junior. Hopefully the Bruins thought that was going to be a reset for him. Wasn't the best performance from Canada in World Juniors. He comes back, hasn't been able to really produce as much, and has really been kind of banged up, especially the last month or so. And it kind of raises a point as to, one, where exactly his role is going to be down the stretch here, especially where he's going to be in this lineup. And maybe more of a bigger question is, could you see a situation where the Bruins do opt to maybe send him back down to the OHL to end this year, just because as much as we thought maybe he's ready to take that big step forward, maybe he's still better suited to be playing, 19, 20 minutes a night in the OHL and rip things up down there, as opposed to 9 minutes in a fourth line when he really shouldn't be kind of in that checking line spot.
That's a great question, because I think you look at, he comes back from World Juniors. He comes back with a bang. He has 2 assists in his first game back. It was that big win against the Lightning, and you're thinking, all right, here we go. Off for the races. Confidence is there. Confidence is back. He injures himself in the hit attempt on Sean Dursey. Since then, 3 of his last 4 outings under 9 minutes. Not what you want, not what you need. And it feels like he's kind of quieted down a bit. He had a good run out of the gate. His October was really good. His November was pretty good. And then since then, it's been 4 points in 12 games. So you understand he's going to hit that wall. Looks like it's here for him. I don't think it's helped that, I was talking with somebody, we were talking about Matt Poitras, and we both said the same thing, where it's like, he's talented as hell, but good God, he's taken a beating this year. Like,
Yeah.
People internally and around the league are aware of what a beating he's taken, how many hard hits, how many, just close calls, elbows to the face, forearms to the head. Like, so so it was a challenge, right? Like this year is already a success for him in terms of he made the roster as a 19-year-old. He said, I'm going to make it hard for them to send me back. He did exactly that. So if you want to send him back and let him play and play 20 minutes a night versus 9 here, have a set roster spot, and then you can call him back when that season is over. I would have to see the timeline when that would line up. I mean, maybe that is the ultimate goal for them. There's also the contract part of it that if he plays 40 games, that counts as a year of service, gets him a little bit closer to UFA status. I'm not worried about that in 2024, to be honest with you, but perhaps the Bruins are, where the longer you have team control, especially if you're going to make some of these moves that we're talking about, whether it's a Lindholm or a Hanifin, to have team control for as long as you can to really allow you to do that load up. That's pretty important. And so I think it's more about the wall than it is the contract, but it's a legit conversation I think they have to have, sometime now. And maybe they had it over the break, but it's going to get real now, I think, depending on what his diagnosis is and when he comes back into the lineup.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at just the as you said, the beating he's taken. I think even Montgomery said on Tuesday, it's like, yeah, he wasn't on the ice because he was like at a doctor's appointment. Like the guy's gotten the shit kicked out of him. Like and again, full credit to him. Every time he gets knocked down, it's what stood out to us about him early on this year in the preseason when he was getting knocked down, gets right back up. It's not like this guy's getting absolutely bullied, but he's 19 years old. He has to add muscle. And as much as, I think the drive and spirit is there for a young kid trying to prove himself, there's a reality of what happens when you collide with a guy who's 29, been in the NHL, who weighs 215, right? Like that happens night in and night out for a guy who's 19. It's going to add up. The bumps and bruises are going to be there for this team, for a player like Poitras. So if it does hit the situation where he does get sent down to the OHL again, I think I wouldn't view it by any means as a failure. I'm sure there'll be the people who are like, oh, what's the point of having this guy up here? If you're 19, you already make it to the NHL, you've shown spurts of being an impact player. And the reason why you maybe just need more seasoning is, one, you're not getting sufficient ice time. And I think the fact that you've had, guys like Lauko or Geeky have settled more into those kind of third line roles, it's kind of limited how much ice time is available, right now in terms of where Poitras is. Because if he is up here and he's going to be getting knocked around, I also don't want him to be in the fourth line spot playing 10, 11 minutes a night, really. Like I'd rather him be down in the OHL, get his confidence up, and then revisit where he is when the Storm season is over down there. But I think there's a lot of factors that play into maybe it is better for him to go down there for the tail end of the season, lick his wounds and then kind of come back and revisit things. But if that is the case, I don't view it as being a letdown by any means for a guy that I think has accelerated his timeline by at least a year, if not 2, from where I think we were back in August looking at his long-term outlook.
Yeah, 100%. And so I just looked this up real quick. The OHL schedule ends March 24th, according to this, the 23-24. So you're still playing hockey. I don't know the OHL standings off the top of my head. Not sure if the Storm are going to make the playoffs or not. But you sort of look at that, like you could theoretically, the regular season ends on April 16th. You could theoretically get him back for the playoffs if that is a legit issue. And yeah, it looks like the Storm are indeed in a playoff spot, it would appear right now. But you look at that, like, and so you could do that, and you could theoretically get him back for the playoffs if that is your concern. It's really interesting. Like you talk about the physicality and whatnot. Like this is why, in case anyone's wondering, some inside baseball stuff here. This is why we always ask about how much weight did you gain in the off season, because it's much harder to put on weight to add muscle in season. You're so focused on recovery that you can't say, I'm going to beef up now and I'm going to be ready to go against NHL men. Like you just can't do that. That's why it's always stressed in the summertime and in training camp. Hey, how much weight did you put on? How'd you do it? What do they say about it? Like because it's just harder to put it on in the season. And I think you're seeing that with a guy like Poitras, who, you see him out of his pads and you're like, oh, this is a skinny fella. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you see the challenges it does pose a guy when you get into the nitty gritty, the dog days of the NHL calendar, because damn, this is a tough league to be a small guy, especially as a teenager, let alone, what you got to learn. You got to learn the physicality as well. So, it's possible that this would be the best thing to do for him. And then when you need a shot of adrenaline in round one, you say, we got Poitras back from juniors. He's feeling good about himself. Put him in. Like, you can do that. It's not too dissimilar from the Tyler Seguin move. I know that was different because he played the whole year here, but Tyler Seguin was a jolt of lightning for you in the playoffs that year. He wasn't a regular. He was a guy that you threw in when you wanted some more offense or whatever. So, that may be how to look at Poitras as well.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really fascinating to see how he does. And again, most important thing for him, it's also getting healthy. If he's already still going back to the doctor, see where he is, hell, he could be a situation where the guy gets shut down if he's really dealing with a lot of injuries, which when you look at the amount of hits he's taken, has added up. So definitely something to keep tabs on in the days and weeks ahead. But as we round out and end this podcast, Ty, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you on the interwebs, on Spotify, all that good stuff? Where can we consume your content?
You can find me here. You can find me at 98.5thesportshub.com. You can find me on the air every now and then over there and on their website. That's basically what I do. So, yeah, you can find me there. How about yourself?
Yeah, so you can find me over at boston.com. I contribute to the Globe as well for all stuff, whether it's recaps, features, breakdowns. We'll be diving more into the trade deadline in the days ahead as well, obviously. So you can find all my stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can follow me at ConorRyan_93. So this was episode 201 of Poke the Bear. I'm Conor Ryan. That's Ty Anderson. You guys have a great rest of your week.